Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that are read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is daughter of the book All is Now Lost, and special kind of heartache, no other than Miss Laura Elizabeth.
Hello.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Laura, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm the author of two books in the Island Mystery series. They are cozy mysteries set on an island off the coast of South Carolina. And I'm excited to talk to you tonight about these two books and the series as a whole that I'm planning on having about between 5 and 8 books in this series.
Miss Laura, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. What inspired you to become an author?
I traveled to this island many years ago and fell in love with it on my very first trip to this special place. And I wanted to tell a story about what this place means to me. I came across a person who was interested in publishing these books, but he encouraged me to write in a genre that I read a lot of. And so I'm a big fan of mysteries. And so I took a stab at writing a story that talks about building community, starting life over again, having a strong female protagonist, and all wrapped up in experiencing life on this island. And so I think the island was really my inspiration for writing these stories.
Yes, definitely. So, can you tell us about All Is Now Lost?
Sure. All Is Now Lost is book one in the Island Mystery series. The story opens with the protagonist leaving her home after the death of her husband. She's a middle aged woman and she goes to this island where she and her husband and her family had a second home, and she makes that her primary home. She becomes an entrepreneur and opens up a bookstore on this island. And she's really searching for a new meaning at this point in her life. She had been raised her children, she had been a professional working woman in a large metropolitan city. And after the death of her husband, she was essentially lost. So she began her life over again in this place that was familiar to her, but previously she had just been a visitor on this island. Through a series of events, she finds herself confronted with a what seems to be a murder, and she ends up, with the help of her friend, solving this crime as an amateur sleuth. And through the course of her investigation, she learns a lot about not only the island as a full time resident, but what it means to begin her life again, to build on the relationships that she's just started to have, and to really find herself at this new place in her life. So that's book one. And then book two, A Special Kind of Heartache, is related to book one because the same cast of characters begins in this story. They're a little bit more familiar with each other. Their bonds of friendship are a little bit stronger. But she again is faced with solving a crime. And in this book, she is um, challenged with how to go about doing that. And she learns that because she's more familiar and more confident and stronger in her relationships, she doesn't just have to rely on herself. She can rely on her community to solve the crime. So,
What are your struggles in writing both novel?
the first book was a little challenging because I had never written a mystery before. And so it was really important to figure out the pacing of uncovering clues and building that dialogue, because this is an amateur sleuth who solves the crime. So it's not relying on facts or forensics or, fingerprints and things like that from a crime scene that would be part of a procedural mystery. So she really has to rely on powers of observation and deductive reasoning. And the way to relay those things are through character dialogue. And an important part of that would be figuring out the pacing. How soon into the story do we announce a crime? How soon after that is the first suspect introduced? And then where are the clues along the way? And then, of course, how to wrap them up. So, learning how to do that in my first novel was my biggest challenge. In the second novel, because I want these books to stand alone, a reader does not have to read the first one in order for the second one to make sense. Um, it was important for me to relay to readers, why is the protagonist on the island and why does the island mean something to her, without retelling all of book one. So finding ways to weave their stories, the characters' stories, into book two without retelling book one was probably the biggest challenge. It's really important to me that people get to know the characters and love the characters like I do. So I wanted to make sure that their voices were still heard in the second book.
Can you tell us the research process of these two novels?
Sure. The research, I am very familiar with the island. I have two pieces of property on the island, so I've spent a lot of time there. So my research has been for many years gathering my own experiences, and the geography and some of the history of the island has come through my own personal experiences and the experiences of interacting with full time residents and people who have also traveled to this island. But in the second book, the crime is occurs from a situation that is can actually happen in real life, and I didn't know. I mean, I knew how I wanted to deliver it, but I didn't know the specific outcome of this interaction that the victim had with a substance that eventually caused the death. So I had to do a lot of research around that, and learned about different chemical interactions and the timing of those interactions and what the medical implications of those interactions would be. So I had to do a little bit of research around that to make sure that the story was, truthful in that, and that there was that air of authenticity that this could actually really happen. So
So, Miss Laura, how is important is outlining before diving into the writing the first draft?
I actually just sit down and write. I have a basic framework of how I want this story to unfold, and some of the main characters, particularly in book one. But I just sit and think about how I want to connect point A to point B, and then I just write it. And when I'm writing, I try and write at least every day. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way because I do have a full time job outside of being an author, but I always go back at least a chapter or two and edit that chapter as a warm up to beginning to write, so that I'm always touching the manuscript and tightening the dialogue as I go through, the writing process. So it just kind of evolves, more of a, as things come to me, I work on developing that versus plot the whole story out and then just fill in the blanks. I let the characters kind of lead me through the story.
What techniques can help you to develop or for developing a compelling and believable characters?
I really believe that reading the story, the draft out loud, and working on it over and over and over again, constantly making it tight is probably the best process for me. At least it is. It's just always making sure that the way the dialogue flows is true to that one character, the character who's speaking in the story. So the characters don't sound alike, they don't have the same inflection in their voice, that the messages they're delivering are in their true, authentic voice. And that tool has been very helpful to me. I often read it out loud. I'll have other people read it out loud with me so that we're reading against each other like a conversation, to make sure that these would be the things that these people would say to each other with the emotion and with the word searching and the accents that people have, that these are real things that real people would say.
What are effective ways to build a plot that keeps reader engaged from beginning to end?
I think it's really important to have a plot that unfolds in real time in a way that makes sense, that you're not spending any huge long length of time on any one particular topic, that you move through it with the attention span that people have in their regular lives. It's sometimes when I'm reading a story, if I'm lost in too much on one particular point, I just can't stay there. I have to, feel like I'm moving through it like I would in my day. So I try and outline, the way the story moves to parallel people's real life experiences.
A special kind of heartache. Is it a standalone, or you need to read All Is Now Lost as a prerequisite for this novel?
No, they are standalone books, and all the books in this series will also stand alone.
So, can you share a chapter of All Is Now Lost that meaningful to you?
I'm sorry, can I share a
A
chapter
chapter that
is the most.
meaningful to you.
Yeah, I think actually the last chapter is the most meaningful to me, because in both books, because it's the wrap up of what has happened. The characters have experienced a loss, and some of the characters have experienced multiple losses. And um, it's kind of the wrap up where they are all in their own ways sharing what this experience has meant to them and where they are as a result of the experience. And so it leaves the reader with the idea that the characters are going to be okay. They've come through something and they've come away stronger than they were when they started. And that is the messaging of the books and the series, is that because of where they are and the community that they are a part of, these people will be okay, even though they're facing these challenges that they were not expecting to experience and that they were not prepared to experience and had to figure out how to deal with it. They're going to be okay. And so I think those in both books so far, those the last chapters have been my favorite. um, I'm not sure that all of the books in the series will end the same way, but so far these two have.
How did you ensure your book theme is clearly communicated and impactful?
I think because one of the things I like to do is share my manuscript as I'm working on it with others in beta reader groups or just friends of mine who um, know me or know my experiences. And then I also share it with people who have never been to the island or who have had different experiences than I have. And I get their feedback on whether the story is believable and whether they enjoyed it or whether they need it more from anything. So I gather feedback from people and discuss the manuscript through the process. So, and I've enjoyed that. I enjoy, making sure that the messaging is clear.
So, Miss Laura, what will be your advice for those aspiring writers out there want to write their first novel?
I would say if you think that you have a story that you want to tell the story, write the book. Just don't worry about doing it for someone or something else. Do it for what is in your heart. If you have a story that you want to share with the world, do it without counting on some result. Do it for you and do it so that people can hear the message that you want to share, because no one can predict what the results are going to be. And if you're doing it for someone else, you're never going to have the fulfillment of getting your words out into the world for you.
Very well said, Miss Laura. Very well said. And stop procrastinating, people. If you have the passion to write, 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 and share to the world. So,
Absolutely.
yes. So, Miss Laura, what is your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Well, ultimately, I'd like to, to get through the series of for these stories in the Island Mysteries, and my long-term goal would be to see if there is someone out there who would like to bring these books to, the screen for other people to see in a series type of production on TV. I think the stories and the characters lend themselves to that type of production, and I'd love to see that happen. That would be my ultimate long-term goal.
Miss Laura, good luck for your goal. And
Yeah.
we are looking forward for more empowering books like this. So, what strategies can help you to stay motivated and productive throughout the writing process?
Very important for me to, block all the distractions, to have one place and a time that I know is dedicated to this work, because there's always some other distraction or something pulling on us all to do. And so if I commit to this like I would any other appointment, then that's what I need to do to stay focused. I'm also an observer. When I'm at work or in social situations, I'm watching how people are communicating with each other, the ways, their nuances of their conversation. I'm listening to what phrases people use. And if I have a good idea, I'm always writing it down so that I can weave it into something that one of the characters are doing. So as long as it's true to what who that character is. So there's been a couple of phrases that I've heard people use, and I want to use them, but they don't work for the main characters of the book. So I may even develop a secondary character just so that I can use those phrases, because sometimes they're so good. So I just think you have to be true and paying attention to what it is that you're trying to accomplish, like any other project that's in front of you that you want to give 100% to. You have to commit to it.
Commitment, people, commitment. So, to sum up our episode, Miss Laura, how do you handle criticism and use it constructively to improve your book?
Uh, Criticism is hard. Writing is personal. You're putting yourself out into the universe, and sometimes people don't get it, so it is hard to hear feedback. Um, there are some people who offer genuine feedback for constructive purposes, and I'm always open to hearing that, because I think when people come from a genuine place like that, they are interested in you succeeding, and I appreciate that somebody would even offer that for my, benefit, for me to learn something from. So I'm open to that. I um, will weigh whether it makes sense for what I'm trying to accomplish. And I have had people who have said, I would do this with a character. And sometimes I agree with that. And sometimes I don't, but I'll write down the things that I think are very valuable to me. And then as I'm working through maybe a later stage in a book or even the second book, I'll look at it with fresh eyes to see whether I can incorporate that feedback at this point or not. I think that's the benefit of having kind of a dynamic group of people who want to read your work, at the early stages, that you can kind of adapt to their feedback if it's true and runs parallel to what you're trying to accomplish in the story. So, but there are people, and we all know this, that just like to say stuff that, just to get, a review somewhere, or somebody just doesn't get what you're doing. Like I had someone say that they didn't think an amateur sleuth would actually be empowered to solve a crime. Well, that's the whole genre, of this type of mystery, is that an amateur sleuth is the person who solves the crime. So clearly, this genre doesn't work for that person. So that's not personal to me. It's just their own preferences, that they would prefer to read something that seems more realistic to them. So, we weigh and listen and, hear what we can use. And then if it's not something useful, we just move on, because not every book is going to appeal to every reader, but sometimes there are some really great people who are offering heartfelt, constructive feedback, and I appreciate that.
Miss Laura Elizabeth, once again, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your books? Go ahead, Miss Laura.
Thank you. So, yeah, you can find me at my website, theislandmysteries.com, or on Instagram at The Island Mysteries. My books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, all the major retailers, Books A Million, and I'm also on Facebook. So I'd love to connect.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Laura Elizabeth, because if you support her, more novels to come. So, Miss Laura, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
More to come, people. See you soon. You are most welcome to come back, Miss Laura, and